Hello, and welcome to the first episode of a series on American history. Please note that I am not a historian, and all of this is just for discussion. With that in mind, I had an idea to start this off with the French and Indian War, or as it's known in Europe, the 7 Years' War, with the idea that this was the first event in American history that truly was American. It set the stage for the colonies to form a loose union against the actions taken by Britain to help pay for the war, as well as help the East India Company regain solvency. So now on to the conflict itself. It started as a border skirmish after the negotiations failed after the War of Austrian Succession to resolve the land disputes between the British and the French, and blew up into full-scale raids by French and English commanders with their native allies, which began on the 21st of June, 1752, where the French attacked a trading center called Pickawillany in the Ohio country, resulting in the death of 14 Miami natives and the capture of 3 traders. In response to that, a major who was 21 years old at the time, named George Washington, was sent to present the French with an ultimatum to leave the Virginia Territory, which had no real boundaries to the west and went as far as the ocean, in October of 1753, which the French denied. So in response to this, they sent Washington to Fort Duquesne, which later became Pittsburgh, in which Washington learned of a Canadian or French scouting party in the area. So on May 28th, 1754, Washington surprised the French forces at what will be known later as the Battle of Jumonville Glen, resulting in a victory for British forces. Despite the victory, however, Washington retreated several miles to a place called Fort Necessity, which on July 3rd fell to French forces after he surrendered. After these 2 battles, news reached Europe, and by 1755 the French sent 6 regiments to New France, or Canada, and the British sent a fleet out to intercept them. On June 8th, 1755, a British squadron captured a French ship and 2 transports, and afterwards harassed the French trade and shipping, capturing sailors and ships along the way, which eventually led to a formal declaration of war in the spring of 1756. The next 4 years was a back-and-forth campaign whereby the British captured Ticonderoga and Fort Niagara, and the British won the Battle of the Plains of Abraham, where the French-Canadian capital of Quebec surrendered to the British forces. Despite this, the 7 Years' War raged on in Europe, India, and the West Indies, but the fighting in America was largely over. On the 10th of February, 1763, the Treaty of Paris was signed, which effectively ended the 7 Years' War and all the fighting in North America. The results of this were the British gained all of French Canada and all of French possessions east of the Mississippi River, as well as Florida from Spain in exchange for the return of Cuba, which was captured earlier in the war. Now, I believe this is the beginning of the end for the British in America because it gave the colonists something to identify as. They had a sort of a new American identity, which was separate from the British identity they had before this war, and the actions of the British afterwards certainly didn't help their cause when they started taxing the Americans in ways that they felt were unjust.